that I was ravished, for there where afflictions abound, grace is given superabundantly. So she was not reacting to whatever the other women were doing, torturing her. So they cried, we must double our blows. She does not feel them. She neither speaks nor cries. And this blank garment says, how should I have cried, since I was swooning with happiness within? She was not feeling any kind of suffering inward. With respect to Jnanis, men of knowledge, we can take the example of Swami Chidananda, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, the second president of the Ramakrishna order. Towards the last years of his life, his body was racked with several kinds of ailments. He could not even walk. He became so weak. All sorts of ailments were there on the body. So someone asked him, Maharaj, how are you? And Swamiji replied, I am fine. He was again asked, his body seemed to be in bad condition. Then Maharaj replied, oh, you are asking about the body? The body is not at all well. But I am fine. That's the answer given by the Swamiji. That is the test of realization. Test of spirituality. Talking about God with people, Maharaj said, I am in excellent spirits. I am in excellent spirits. Pain and anguish belong to the body. He who dwells within the body is not affected by them. He is bliss itself. I am not the body. I am that eternal supreme being, ever pure, illumined and free. And Chidananda Maharaj said further, the Divine Master has given me that knowledge in the fullest measure. Referring to Sri Ramakrishna, he said like that. So it does not make any difference whether the body is well or sick or old. There is a fine book titled For Seekers of God. It's very good to read that book. It helps a lot to understand many things in spiritual life. So, any given experience can be painful to one, indifferent to another, and joyous to a third, depending on how much spiritual knowledge our love of God has been attained. Vrittis, that is waves in the mind, they are like reflecting surfaces for the soul and are of three kinds: tamasic, rajasic and sattvic. In the first, the reflection is most obscured and the image is barely seen. In the second, the reflection is clearer, but the image is distorted. That is it. When the rajasic is predominant, that is the result. The image is distorted so that we mistake it for what it is not. In the third, the sattvic, the reflection is clear so that we see the image properly, but it is at best a reflected image and not the real thing. A real thing, in Sanskrit it is called Swarupa. The wise man recognizes these as reflected images in his mind and is not deceived by them. He knows that they have no relation to him and belong only to nature. Therefore, whatever their condition, he is free from their effects. So having withdrawn his consciousness from all the vrittis, the reflections disappear and merge into their source, the divine self. When that is done, there remains no one to experience pain, for the self is only joy. There's another book, there's also a Vedantic text, is called Drigdrishya Viveka, small text. There it is said, Dehabhimane galite vijñāte paramatmani yatra yatra manoyati tatra tatra samadhyaha. With the disappearance of attachment to the body and with the realization of the Supreme Self, to whatever object the mind is directed, one experiences samadhi. So, Sri Ramakrishna, though he suffered on account of the injury on the arm, it never disturbed his equilibrium. He would immediately raise up his mind or withdraw the mind from the body and remain himself in blissful samadhi state. And he would communicate spiritual ideas to the devotees who come to him. So, his life is an example set before us how to face the situations in our life. As long as we are in this world, as long as we are in this body, things happen. But we have to be attentive about what we are practicing, how we are able to dispel the darkness of ignorance, how we are practicing spiritual disciplines. Then slowly, slowly all the matters become clear. So there is no point in debating about pleasure and pain. The only way is to go beyond this, the highest reality. It's only when we experience that highest reality, we will be well established in most wonderful peace. Well, Sri Ramakrishna has pointed out why we are suffering, why we don't have peace. Even though God keeps on satisfying our desires, yet we will not have peace. Why? Without getting peace, what's the use of all this? A kind of involvement in the things. What's the reason for all this? Sri Ramakrishna tells that because you are fascinated with the splendor, so you are having no peace. This whole creation is the manifestation of God's splendor. We are in it. We are totally participating in various types of activities in this world. As long as we are involving in the splendor, so long we will not have real peace. What Sri Ramakrishna wants to say is that don't get lost in this splendor. God alone is real. The splendor has but a 2-day existence. Today is one thing, tomorrow is another. That's the way of the splendor. Again, Sri Ramakrishna tells the magician and his magic. People are so fascinated with the wonder about the magic, but it's all unreal. The magician alone is real. Again, he gives another example. Rich man and his garden. When people go and see the garden, they are so much fascinated by the beauty of the garden. They should look for its rich owner. So, Sri Ramakrishna points out, turn to God, the owner of the garden. The whole world is a garden of Sri Ramakrishna, God, Supreme God, whatever name you call. But how to see? Is there any way? Again, it has been pointed out. The only way to see God, experience that highest truth, dispel all ignorance of unreality, is religion. Religion shows the way to see God. Religion. If you discard religion, you are discarding peace. You don't arrive at peace at all. Religion has supreme importance in our life. You have to learn to understand the principles of religion. You have to come in contact with holy people and holy scriptures. You must step into definite way of practice. To realize, to experience what is everlasting. It's only through religion you arrive at that highest truth. That's the way to reach the light of knowledge. That's very important. Suppose you see a fantastic building. To a layman's perspective, only the superstructure of the building is evident. He is just wondering about the beauty of the building. But an engineer who can mentally have a view from within is aware, is intensely aware of the invisible foundations that support the beautiful, imposing superstructure. Without foundation, without that strong base, how can you have such fantastic building? Likewise, when you take the spiritual path, when you are adapting religion, when you really aspire for peace, you must lay foundation. Whatever you want to achieve, it will start with firm foundation. Tyag. Renunciation is the foundation of religions. Without renunciation, it has no stable structure. Without foundation, building is not safe. It crumbles any moment. So renunciation is the foundation of religions. Their ideals and realizations, even more than of its outer forms. But there's a point here. How that idea of renunciation enters into the heart. When does it enter? When a person realizes the inadequacy of the external world as well as of the internal world consisting of body, senses, mind and ego. Then only religious aspirations awaken and grow. But first step is, you must be very definite about the inadequacy of these things, of the external world and internal world, both. If that state has not come, then you are yet to wait for a long, long time to try for peace. Side by side with this dissatisfaction with temporal things will almost inevitably grow an attraction towards God, the imperishable truth. Therefore, Tyag always has a twofold character. Negatively, it is moving away from the impermanent. Positively, it is getting anchored into the permanent. Getting anchored in the permanent. So, religion, which totally concerns the permanent reality of God, demands Tyag, renunciation, as its foundation. When this is absent, and yet a claim for religion or spirituality is advanced, we must conclude that like water in a mirage, spirituality is conspicuous by its semblance only, just a garb, hollow inside, totally hollow. Renunciation is the content of religion. Without that, religion has no meaning. You may say, I'm this, I'm that. You may have 100,000 interfaith dialogues every day. It leads nowhere. How many interfaith conferences are going on all over the world? By this time you should have got heaven and earth. But not a bit of the world is changed. Because it depends upon your personal character. Unless you are properly well established in spiritual culture, your peace is only a talk. Just a talk. Anyway, better to talk than be silent. At least by talking, have that satisfaction of peace. If that is your view, very good. But you remain where you are. With all your pains, with all your sufferings, with all your sorrows, with all your grievances, with all dirty stuff, you remain where you are. You must purge all the impurities from the heart. Then only you have got the right to say, I should see God. Why I am not able to see God? Until the impurities are removed from the heart, how can you say that God is not coming, God is not showing grace, this, that? No. So Sri Ramakrishna is a practical demonstration of the supreme value of renunciation. It is not that because you are in the world, you must never practice renunciation. Now, if you don't want to practice renunciation, be ready to enjoy peacelessness. Ready to enjoy peacelessness. Enjoy it. Tyaga, that is the Sanskrit term for renunciation. to the ordinary external view, appears as a joyless discipline. But to its earnest follower, it brings a rare type of joy, a non-sensuous inner joy, the joy from the spiritual self. In common parlance, joy or happiness is always associated with contact, physical or mental. But all sensations and cognitions at their deeper levels, being psychological, happiness is always really an inner phenomenon. Again, a more incisive problem. Will trace the source of all happiness to the innermost spiritual self in man. The bliss of the self is imperfectly reflected by the ego, mind, senses, sense objects, and this reflected joy is what the ordinary person desires and enjoys. Since Tyaga, by breaking down the reflectors, takes a person straight to the spiritual source of all happiness, the right type of Tyag gives joy at all stages, especially in the advanced stages. So don't get stuck up with the splendor and forget the reality. So there's the first point which Sri Ramakrishna has pointed out. Wherever you are, in whatever position, develop that quality of tyag, renunciation. The more you are heading on towards that, the more and more peace you will enjoy, real peace. Second point which Sri Ramakrishna has said, he was telling somebody to bring some pictures, a yogi like that. He wanted to see them. In fact, I have seen in my own home, in my pre-monastic days, there is a main hall, at least about 5-6 pictures, photos were hanging on the walls. What type of pictures? Not naked, half naked pictures of people. No, it's the pictures of gods and goddesses. I still remember It's very nice to recollect now what I had seen before. My father, every day, as soon as he woke up from his bed, he would come to the hall and he would stand in front of the photos. There was Lakshmi, Saraswati, other photos were there. He would stand there 1 minute, 2 minutes in front of those pictures. Then he would go to attend other activities, whatever it is. So, what a fine tradition it is. Sri Ramakrishna tells there's a point in that. What is that? First of all, they are holy pictures. That you must be very definite about what pictures you are keeping in your dwelling place. Holy pictures kindle spiritual consciousness as an imitation fruit awakens the idea of a real one. So it's nice to have pictures, holy pictures. Suppose you see a picture of a saint, how peaceful and blissful. As long as you keep on looking at that picture, you yourself feel that immense peace inside. So all these things are important. Without doing anything, simply telling, I didn't see God, don't think that God is such a small thing to come and show up himself to you whenever you want, all sorts of things. No. Prepare yourself properly. Develop renunciation. Take all steps required for it. Kindle that spiritual consciousness. Then you will enjoy the beauty of it. So spiritual advancement is possible when the mind becomes pure and pure. Purity of the mind is very important factor in the spiritual field. So Sri Ramakrishna tells pointedly, don't be a worldly person. What's the meaning of worldly person? Whose mind is always engaged in worldly activities. To whom worldly activities are more important than whatever other things you may call. Spirituality, God. Let me go and give one pranam, one salutation to God. That's all. I don't have time to do practices. He has got so much of time to do all sorts of things outside. When it comes to the point of practicing spirituality, he tells, I don't have even a time to utter the name of God. You don't know my state of mind. As soon as I return home, I feel so much exhausted, tired, I can't do anything. Simply I lay down on the bed. That's all. What can be done? As long as I live in this world, I should behave that way. Otherwise, who will take care of me? So this kind of argument They want to put forth and convince themselves they are right. All right, if you think you are right, go on with that view. But Sri Ramakrishna tells very clearly, unless you are guileless, you can't come near God. You can't come. So Sri Ramakrishna calls a worldly man a hypocrite. Why? He professes to love God, but he is attracted by worldly things. He does not give God even a very small part of the love he feels for lust and gold. But he says he loves God. Give up hypocrisy. Be guileless. Then only you can lay the firm foundation of spirituality. Then only the spiritual plant can grow. So, find out yourself. Think about all these ideas given by Sri Ramakrishna, point by point, and practice them with all sincerity. That's why Sri Ramakrishna has said, sincerity and guilelessness, if you have, you will achieve anything. Anyway, these are, just I have taken 1 or 2 points from the last class. Let us approach him in great humility, in a state of total surrender. Then he will answer all our prayers. Total surrendering of one's self at the divine feet is very important. Total surrendering means to surrender your ego, which is the root cause of all problems. So, with great devotion and sincerity, you should pray to him to remove all ignorance, to remove all worldliness from the mind. Worldliness. Unless you get rid of worldliness, you cannot be free from sufferings. Worldliness is like a poison. All that is good in you will be destroyed by the worldliness. So, Sri Ramakrishna again and again instructs to give importance for the development of spiritual dimension. You have neglected the spiritual dimension, you have neglected the spiritual growth of yourself, so you are suffering. So Sri Ramakrishna tells you to have a definite ways to follow meticulously without any room for distraction from your spiritual path. So he suggests spiritual family. There are so many families are there, but spiritual family is very important. Make the family life spiritual. Then even though you are in the world, you are not tainted by the worldliness. So, what he suggests is that both husband and wife should cooperate one another to follow the religious path. So the partnership should be used in a proper way so that both can grow well and both can be happy. So Sri Ramakrishna suggests that after the birth of one or two children, both husband and wife should practice to live like brother and sister. Both of them are devotees of God. That feeling must be there. God's servant and God's handmaid. So you must be always happy with God and His devotees. God alone is their own. A family which has developed spiritual inclinations, they are like Pandava brothers. They don't forget God in happiness or in sorrow. So character, moral and ethics, the values of moral and ethics are important to have effective spiritual growth. You may practice spiritual discipline, but if the mind dwells on lust and gold, the spiritual discipline does not produce the right result, because the mind is turned towards enjoyment. It doesn't want to come back. It gets more and more involved It wants to be there more and more there itself. It is not bothered about anything else. In the form of cravings, it will steal all the goodness in you. And the result is obvious. You will be drowned in the bottomless ocean of worldliness. Bhavasagara. So, you will see most of the people rushing in mad pursuit after various types of sensual enjoyments. It's as if it is just for enjoying they have come into this world. Some people even may think if we don't enjoy, we may lose it away. We may not enjoy at all. So why not we enjoy and die instead of not enjoying and not getting any spiritual benefit? So, your mind is always in constant danger of becoming contaminated. So, Sri Ramakrishna tells you it's very important to engage your mind effectively in thinking good thoughts. That's why we suggest read some good books, meditate on the spiritual ideas in them, think over them over and again, and discuss the uplifting objects, subjects, whatever you have studied in the books. And Sri Ramakrishna also suggests that your activity is so much well arranged that you should spend some time in worship of God. You must establish contact with Him. Daily you must go and sit in front of Him, offer your little worship, be in His presence for some time before you go for any job. You have to arrange the timings in such a way that you are able to do that. And then the second point that is required is to serve holy men. Because by constantly serving holy people, you get purified, you develop interest in spiritual path, and then you must engage yourself in contemplation. So meditating on an incarnation of God, one meditates on God Himself. The Supreme God, whom we have not seen, has come to this world in the form of an incarnation to show us the way. If you study their life, you will be inspired to take up the spiritual ways. and their life itself is a guide to us. The problem is we don't follow the instructions. We are always anxious about the result. We won't get the result so quickly. To get the result in spiritual path, one needs to be thoroughly purified. So, it's very important all the samskaras of the mind are properly purified. Develop sufficient good samskaras, then it should be possible to have the experience. So meditation becomes successful only when the mind is not distracted too much. Meditation is possible when you willingly allow some time to introspect yourself and to be aware of the unrealities of the world. Every day you undergo lots of experience by coming in contact with various types of people. You can't change them. You can't do anything. It is not in your hands. On the other hand, it's all there only to teach you. Seeing those things, you must learn. Learning is important. Learning. Develop renunciation. Don't add on desires to the list of desires already in your mind. Desires are the stumbling block. They come and disturb you at the time of meditation. As long as you entertain desires, so long you will not be able to have the spiritual illumination. Once referring to a devotee who was very close to Sri Ramakrishna, somebody asked whether that devotee would be liberated because he was serving you so closely and because he was in close association with you, and by your grace he was able to see Divine Mother and Lord Shiva in you. So he was so fortunate in so many respects. All the time he was thinking about you. So does he get illumination? Will he be liberated in this very life? Sri Ramakrishna knew everybody. He knew Sri Ramakrishna has been giving spiritual instructions so that we may follow the path zealously. Sri Ramakrishna is fully aware that it is not a very smooth path. In the beginning of spiritual life, one goes by a roundabout way. One has to suffer a great deal. But when through the grace of God, devotion and ecstatic love are awakened in his heart, the path becomes very easy. Why the spiritual life seems to be difficult? Why it is so? Because it is rather difficult to pull the mind away from the worldly attractions. Unless you pull the mind away from them, spiritual life will not begin. It is very simple. So it is difficult for us to follow, because it is very simple. So what Sri Ramakrishna tells here is that you will have to shun all these temporal attractions, glamours, illusions. Call by whatever name you want. Distractions, diversions. So, ask yourself, what is it I want? You have to ask that question directly to yourself before you contemplate on spiritual life. Do I want this fleeting life of transient attractions, enjoyments, diversions? Or do I want the eternal bliss of everlasting life? So then you will be able to decide upon in what manner you will have to pass through spiritual way. So Sri Ramakrishna tells us that we will have to cultivate dispassion. Dispassion is the foundation of spiritual life. Without dispassion towards the world, faith and love do not grow. Somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, Where should one concentrate? People keep on asking this question. Should we have to concentrate on the heart center or between the eyebrows? Where? Sri Ramakrishna replied, the heart is a splendid place. But then he said, you may meditate wherever you like. Every place is filled with Brahman consciousness. Is there any place where it doesn't exist? The whole universe is filled up by God's consciousness. It is because of our foolish ignorance, it's because of our foolish attachment to worldly things, we have become blind. We are unable to see the glory of God. There is a significant story in the Puranas which Sri Ramakrishna tells. Sriman Narayan was incarnated himself as Vaman, a brahmachari. So he went and asked Bali Chakravarti, who was well known for charity. So he went and asked him, I noted you are well reputed as a good charitable person. Are you able to give me 3 steps of land? This Bali, the name of the person who was ruling the heavens, he said, what? Asking only 3 steps. You can ask anything you want, I am ready to give. Why you ask only 3 steps? But then that brahmachari said, no, I want only 3 steps, nothing more. Anyway, not going to the details of the story, Bali agreed. And what this Vaman did, with 2 steps, the heavens, the earth and the interspaces, he covered. Is there any place uncovered by God? It is said that the whole creation is the Virat. That is the universal form of God. Vishwatma, Paramatma. The whole universe is the body of God. Then Sri Ramakrishna tells, you can meditate wherever you want. But heart center is splendid. You can meditate there. There are 2 kinds of meditation. One is on the formless God and the other on God with form. There also Sri Ramakrishna tells, whatever that suits you, do it. Don't look upon another person. What is he doing? It is not your business. You look to yourself. First you have experience. Why are you bothered about another man's affair? Where is the time to criticize others when you have no time to practice yourself? So, Sri Ramakrishna tells and confirms that God can be meditated upon by concentrating on His divine forms or concentrating on the formless aspect. Both are true. God with form is as real as God without form. That is the statement of Sri Ramakrishna. Once a devotee, a lady devotee, I happened to see her when she came to Bangalore. When she came to Bangalore, I was a brahmachari, a novice. When she came to Bangalore, she was 90 plus, I think, age. I was probably 25 or 26. She had seen Sri Ramakrishna. Her name, Bhavatarini. She gave her experience. She spoke in Bengali. She was a Bengali lady. Somebody translated into English. She said, one day Sri Ramakrishna came to her home. She was a young girl. Whenever the holy people come, it is a tradition that all the people of the household would go and offer salutations. So this little girl immediately went to him and made salutations and sat there for a few minutes. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting there alone, and this little girl was looking at him. Just a minute or so, she saw to her surprise that whole form of Sri Ramakrishna just disappeared. Just disappeared. She could believe. She rubbed her eyes and saw again and again. No. Where did he go? This moment I saw him. Where did he go? She was just wondering. Immediately she saw again Sri Ramakrishna sitting, smiling with a blissful face. That was her experience. She narrated that. She said, when I saw Sri Ramakrishna, I was completely in raptures. Full of joy. So, Parabrahman, who is Sri Ramakrishna? Embodiment of all gods and goddesses. All gods and goddesses merge into him. That is Sri Ramakrishna. Once a devotee, a sadhaka who was worshipping Ram, he came to Sri Ramakrishna. He had Ramlal with him, always worshipping him. As soon as he came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna, that small image Ramlal, which used to give joy to that sadhaka, Thenceforward, it began to spend time in the company of Sri Ramakrishna. It would not go away from Sri Ramakrishna. Finally, that sadhaka came to know that Sri Rama is happy with Sri Ramakrishna, so let him be here. And there is another instance where a devotee of Lord Krishna, who was having the child Krishna on her shoulders, she came to see Sri Ramakrishna. The child was visible only to that lady, not to others, because of her purity of heart, because she was intensely devoted and did intense spiritual sadhanas. So she was blessed with vision of child Krishna. It was always with her, giving joy. And one day she came to Sri Ramakrishna. She kept the child on the ground and offered her salutations. When she got up, what she saw, this little child, Sri Krishna, just crawling and entering into the heart of Sri Ramakrishna, got merged into him, thereby revealing that Sri Ramakrishna is none other than Sri Krishna himself. That was a great revelation to that lady devotee. So, Sri Ramakrishna tells, what is needed is you must worship God, realize the truth. Whatever manner you want, you have it. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. That is why we find in Sri Ramakrishna harmony of religions. In letter and spirit, not simply talking. In letter and spirit, we believe, we feel really that all religious paths lead to the same goal. Then, while talking about meditation, Sri Ramakrishna said many things. I am just taking one or two points only. He talked about Om. The sound Om is itself Brahman. Om is Brahman. After attaining perfection, one hears the sound of this eternal word rising spontaneously from the navel. Om ityekaksharam Brahma, Upanishad says. The one syllable Om is Brahman. Shabda Brahma we call. Brahman in the sound form. By following the trail of Om, you attain Brahman, of which the word is the symbol. Brahman is the ultimate goal. But such a vision is not possible as long as you are conscious of your ego. Ego. I am so and so. A man realizes Brahman only when he feels neither I nor you, neither one nor many. Sri Ramakrishna explains this by an example. There is a sun. Keep 10 jars filled with water. The sun is reflected in each jar. At first, you see one real sun and 10 reflected ones. 10 jars reflecting the sun. So 10 reflected suns you are seeing. If you break 9 of the jars, there will remain only the real sun and one reflection. Out of the 10 jars, you have broken 9. Only one is remaining. Then Sri Ramakrishna tells, each jar represents a jiva. We are all like jars, independent, individual jars, reflecting the same Paramatma. Whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Hindu, whether you are a Mohammedan, whether you are this, that, whatever it may be. Following the reflection, one can find the real sun. Through the individual soul, one can reach the Supreme Soul. Through spiritual discipline, the individual soul can get the vision of the Supreme Soul. What remains when the last jar is broken? It can't be described. Once Sri Ramakrishna himself wanted to share his experiences with the disciples, with the devotees. He wanted to explain everything. He wanted to give out the whole secret. He doesn't want to keep anything secret. He was explaining how God is experienced in different centers. Starting from Mooladhara, all the spiritual centers are located on the spinal cord, according to Yoga Shastra. That's why we ask you to sit straight when you are meditating. Backbone must be straight. The spiritual energy should flow upwards. If you bend, it obstructs the flow. It must be perpendicular when you sit. Of course, we have got reasons we can't sit with something, ailments, etc., etc. That's a different matter. What I am telling is, according to yoga, all these spiritual centers are located on this spinal column. So, there are 7 chakras: Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Ajna, Vishuddha, Sahasrara. These are all different planes of consciousness. When you meditate on particular center, in course of time, the truth is revealed at that plane of consciousness. So Sri Ramakrishna was explaining how that experience would be. So when he came to Sahasrara, that is on the brain, he's just trying to explain, he went into samadhi. He couldn't explain. He tried 2-3 times. 2-3 times same thing happened. He tries to open his mouth, finished, gone into bliss, gone into ecstasy, samadhi. Then he said, it can't be described. It can't be described. It's only to be experienced. That's all. Now, we are all in one way or other in a state of ignorance. That is why we are always not happy. Though we look like happy, we look happy beings, but we are not happy really. Why? Because of the ignorance. The individual jiva means the embodied soul. He is not conscious of God, but of multiplicity. He sees many things around him. On attaining knowledge, he becomes conscious that God dwells in all beings. Sri Ramakrishna explains this by giving an example. Suppose there is a thorn in the sole of your foot. You get another thorn and take out the first one. In other words, he removes the thorn of ajnana, ignorance, by means of the thorn of jnana, knowledge. But on attaining vijnana, he discards both thorns, knowledge and ignorance. Both are transcended. Then he talks intimately with God day and night. It is no more vision of God. All the time he is conscious of God. In fact, that is the state of Sri Ramakrishna. He was always fully aware of God. He who has merely heard of milk is ignorant. He who has seen milk, he has seen the milk, has knowledge. But he who has drunk milk and been strengthened by it has attained vijnana. Jnana, vijnana. Special knowledge, superior knowledge. Now, as I said earlier, man suffers because of his ignorance. This ignorance is his sense of ego. When one is free from this egoism, surrendering his life, his mind and his intellect at the blessed feet of the Lord of all, renouncing all that he calls his own, then is he blessed indeed. That man alone is happy. That means he who has completely given up his ego or surrendered his ego, sacrificed his ego. Both Vidya Shakti, knowledge, and Avidya Shakti, ignorance, are the power of the divine. Both of them are Lord's powers. Both are there. Just like light and its shadow. As long as light is there, shadow also is there. So also, knowledge and ignorance. You will realize him the moment he lifts the veil of ignorance. It is grace and grace alone that we need. In order to get this grace, we need to practice spiritual disciplines. So the root of ignorance and delusion is the sense of little me and mine. Give up this attachment to the little self. This world belongs to you, O Lord. You are the master. I am only one of your servants. Cherish this idea. Because the disease of ignorance is so severe, it requires the greatest of all physicians. Taking the divine name cures the disease. Sing His glory with your entire heart and soul. Man's life becomes fruitful only if he struggles to break out this net of ignorance. Once a devotee asked a question to Swami Ramakrishna, one of the 16 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Could not God free us from ignorance at once if He wished? Ramakrishnanandaji answered, surely. But He is so infinitely loving that He doesn't wish to disturb us. Child is playing, let him play. So long as he sees that we really cling to our ignorance, cling to our desires, he does not come to free us. As long as we cherish desires, he makes us to satisfy those desires. Only when we turn all our desire to Him, then He comes. And then selfishness and ignorance go away. They vanish in a second. But we must not bribe the mind. We must not pretend to be free from desire. The feeling must be absolutely sincere. No fraud or bribery. So Ramakrishna made it very clear. Why God is keeping quiet? Why there is so much suffering? People become angry at God. As if God will respond to their anger. If you show more temper, God laughs more. He smiles more. Well, another devotee asked another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Chidananda. All those pictures, portraits of the 16 disciples are there on the chapel backside. You can see afterwards. Seeing how difficult it is to practice spirituality, one devotee asked the Swami, Swami, can we achieve spiritual enlightenment at all? Swami Vijnanji said, yes, certainly. Then he explains by telling an incident. Once a man approached a holy man for spiritual knowledge. The holy man advised him to cling to the trunk of a tree. As the man did so, the holy man directed him to leave the tree now and come away. The man had held it tight, so much so that he now found it difficult to slacken the grip. He could not come away, even though the Mahatma is telling him to come away. Then Another person came. He hit this man on his head a few times with a stick. When he got the hit,